Happy Columbus Day. Welcome back to The Young Voter. Carl Paladino has been in news today for comments he made over the weekend to a group of Orthodox Jewish leaders in Williamsburg, Brooklyn. Paladino is the GOP gubernatorial candidate in the state of New York. He is running against Democrat Andrew Cuomo. Paladino has come under fire for these remarks from both gay rights groups and the Cuomo campaign. What did Paladino say? Well, he started out by criticizing Cuomo for attending a gay pride parade, saying that it wasn't a good example to set for one's children. He continued, and I quote, "I just think my children and your children would be much better off and much more successful getting married and raising a family. And I don't want them brainwashed into thinking that homosexuality is an equally valid and successful option. It isn't." End of quote. The Cuomo campaign immediately attacked the statement, calling it stunning homophobia. Today, Paladino was on several morning talk shows, including Good Morning America and The Today Show. He stood by his statements, yet he said that they did not make him a bigot and that he was not discriminating. He said that discrimination against homosexuals is, quote, horrible and should not be tolerated. Now what's the deal? Carl Paladino is obviously being homophobic. I mean, we look at this and we see that you can't really argue with this. He said that the children would be much better off getting married. Okay, that's not so bad. Okay. But then he goes on to say, I don't want them brainwashed into thinking that homosexuality is an equally valid and successful option. It isn't. How is that not bigotry? Or, I mean, how is that not homophobia? I mean, he is discriminating against homosexuals. I mean, he's saying that homosexuals should not be discriminated against. That's a horrible thing. And at the same time, he's saying that homosexuality is not an equally valid option to heterosexuality. So I think he's going in two different directions at the same time and not even realizing it. I mean, he stands by his statements. He's saying, these are my opinions, and I stand by them, but that doesn't make me a bigot and doesn't make me a homophobe. Well, that's interesting because what you said clearly states that you don't think homosexuality is equal to heterosexuality. You are discriminating against a group of people based on their sexual orientation. It's discrimination. I mean, you can call it whatever you want, but it's generally accepted by the conventional definition to be discrimination. That's what happened in the 60s, and previously to African Americans. And now you're doing it with gays, and you're calling discrimination horrible when you're engaged in it. I mean, I don't think there's any other way to see this as other than discrimination. It is discrimination. I mean, I don't think you can argue that, no, well, you know, it's not. He's clearly saying gays are inferior. Now, or at least the concept of homosexuality is inferior. Now, I don't see how that's not discrimination. Now, again, I might have missed something. I leave myself open to that. I leave the argument open. But I don't see, until someone shows me where I'm wrong, I don't particularly see where Paladino's coming from. He's matched the definition of discrimination perfectly. Now, the Paladino campaign says Paladino is not a bigot. He's not a homophobe. In fact, apparently, there's some gay staffers on his campaign. He hired some gay men. Okay, well, that doesn't necessarily prove you're not a homophobe. I mean, what you said just goes against everything that equality means. I mean, that's what equality in America means. Equality, being treated equally, being treated and being considered equal. I mean, he's not even considering people equally here. He just doesn't even consider homosexuality equal to heterosexuality. So he's clearly not considering people equal. I don't understand how there's any ambiguity about it. Furthermore, saying it's brainwashing children into believing that it's equal. I mean, harsh language. I mean, it's offensive, and a lot of people are offended by this. A lot of people in the state of New York, in the assembly that are gay, in this mayoral council in New York City, they've spoken against it, and they've said, you know, this is not acceptable. We don't think these statements are acceptable. Now, clearly he's insulted a lot of people, and I'm sure he's insulted a lot of voters in the state of New York, which I don't think are going to side with him on this. Now, again, the context of his remarks are important. I mean, he was in an Orthodox Jewish gathering, so yes, they were perhaps a lot more conservative, and his remarks elicited some applause, etc. But that doesn't really change the nature of his remarks, especially since he confirmed them, and he stood by them today in the talk shows. He stood by them. He said, they're perfectly fine, and I stand by them, and that's what I believe. Well, then that's what you believe, but that's, as much as it's horrible in terms of treating people equally and being a homophobe, this is politically disastrous. I mean, even people that are not gay, I mean, it's regardless. This is infringing on basic human decency. The whole concept of civil rights here is thrown out the door. I mean, these people are, he's not treating them equally. I mean, I don't know what kind of agenda he's espousing here. Now, I guess perhaps this is an improvement to what we discussed last week. I mean, he almost threatened a New York Times reporter. I mean, not almost threatened, he did. And he was yelling and sending pornographic emails to people, calling the Speaker of the House, the Assembly in New York, the Antichrist, and saying he would take a baseball bat. I mean, this is perhaps more focused on issues, or at least his own ideas, so now we get a real sense of Paladino's ideas other than his temperament. We can see that that's what he believes. Now, again, the people in the state of New York will have to make that decision. If you're a voter in New York State, you'll have to make a decision whether you agree with these ideas or if you're not even interested in what he thinks in this regard, and you'll just vote based on other issues. Now, perhaps he has some other good ideas on other issues, but I don't think he has a good idea on this issue. I think what he is being is very homophobic. I don't think there's any denying that. Now, whether those watching agree he's being homophobic or not, that's your decision. I mean, that's your prerogative to make that decision, whether he's homophobic or not. But I don't really feel comfortable saying that he is not homophobic. I think that everything he does, or everything he said, pretty much suggests he's homophobic. Now, you have to decide if it's important to you. You have to decide if this issue is important to you. If you think equality is important, I mean, this is an important part of the American dream, being treated equally. I mean, a lot of, fighting for hundreds of years, for equality in this country. And he's acting in this manner. Now, again, I don't think this might be the most important issue for a lot of voters, but it should be important. I mean, this shows you what a person believes, and whether you're for gay marriage or against gay marriage, it's not important. I mean, that's what he says. He says that he's against gay marriage, but other than that, discrimination is, everybody's equal and everything. Well, he's not saying they're equal here. He's saying, I don't want them, meaning children, brainwashed into thinking that homosexuality is an equally valid and successful option. It isn't. So he's saying that homosexuality is not acceptable, basically. I don't see how that has nothing to do with gay marriage. That has to do with civil rights and people being equal. And I don't think you can really backtrack from that statement unless he recuses the statement, unless he distances himself from that statement. He says it was made in anger or in error, etc. I don't know. But I don't think you really can change the wording of that statement or the interpretation to say that he's not homophobic. And I think people in this state, if you're going to vote for him, you should realize that this is what this man stands for. And okay, if you support that, if you believe in that, then you can stand with him. But be aware that this is what he thinks. So if he's elected, this is how he represents. This is how he will represent you and how he will represent the state of New York and the people of the state of New York. And even if he's not elected, the people that vote for him, this is what you voted for. Now perhaps he'll distance himself from the state developments in the days to come. I'm hoping, but I'm not really counting on it. And I don't know. I hope he can tell the contradiction and perhaps he'll be able to expand on it. I'm not sure. But hopefully this will be cleared up in the coming days. But pay attention to the story because it's important. It's an important issue. I mean, it's not really an issue, it's his beliefs, but it's important. I mean, this guy could represent you if you're going to vote for him. Even if he doesn't win. Alright. Thank you very much. Have a good rest of your day. And see you next time on The Young Voter.